What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what really moved in, go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So SoFi went up 3.25%, 22.49 the low, 23.81 the high. And keep in mind, when SoFi started to really break out here, that is where the market started to really show signs that it was going to break down. So SoFi was once again far exceeding expectations, no different than yesterday, and you had a lot of volume. So 119.4 million shares being traded, 82.1 is the average. So even that in among itself was very abnormal because most of the broader market had very low volume. And so there's quite a few different things I want to talk on that really influenced SoFi to go higher. One was new analyst ratings. So we did have Deutsche with a $21 buy or hold, Mark, who has a 65% success rating. Then we did have a 26 buy from Mizuho, Dan, who has a 54% success rating. So pretty good stuff. Still though, analysts as a consensus on the low end, so 18.75, and that does represent almost a 17% downside. So hopefully more analysts turn to be a little bit more bullish, 25 plus. But then again, I think most of the time with SoFi, analysts are always kind of behind the gun. So again, something to keep in mind. There was this that did happen today, but so far I've been unable to find any transcripts from it. There was no kind of webcast. It wasn't kind of distributed anywhere, but there was a meeting with JMP today in Boston. About what? I'm not really sure. I would have originally said it was for some sort of acquisition or some big plan, but based on what Anthony did post today, clearly it wasn't that. And so Anthony said that now that the deal is closed, he can kind of answer some of the hot questions that people had in regards to that 1.5 billion issuance. So you see SoFi Investor Relations kind of go over some of the hot things. So ultimately that the issuance was a proactive step to provide more flexibility. So good stuff for that. It does say that they're going to potentially consider acquisitions in the foreseeable future. This one does pop everyone's, I guess, rumor. So it says that though none are currently contemplated. So at the end of the day, maybe they might just be saying that because they can't disclose it without officially doing an 8K. But based on that, I don't think that SoFi and Anthony as well would give the rubber stamp and lie. So most likely there is going to be no acquisitions, at least in the next little bit. They also do say that it is for just a stronger position. So I think in reality, it is probably just for an additional moat. But the fact that it did close almost in less than 24 hours is very impressive. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the market or don't stay up to date with issuances, like for it to go that fast, and ultimately it was roughly around 82.7 million shares. So for 82.7 million shares to go near a 52-week high on a stock shows that there is sufficient amount of demand. So I think in among itself, the fact that it did close in that short time span was also a big attributing factor why SoFi did move higher today. So you kind of had the analyst rating and everything else, but nonetheless, you did have the broader markets kind of fear start to really take hold and did bring it down a little bit. After hours, I believe SoFi is down only because of Coinbase's earnings. And you can kind of tell just based on it influencing SoFi that there is a certain multiple now attached to SoFi linked to crypto. And interestingly enough, while I'm actually on the topic of earnings, there was this. So we all knew that Robinhood had relatively good earnings after hours yesterday. So this is the after hours. And this abnormal spike up. So SoFi continued to move higher when Robinhood started to go lower, when Robinhood mentioned that they are no longer going to be really considering, at least in the short term, to pursue getting a charter. So clearly there was a certain underlying fear among SoFi investors that Robinhood was going to be competition. So when obviously Vlad did mention that, SoFi really started to move higher. So interesting type of little things behind the scenes that I kind of noticed. So let me know your general thoughts on that in the comments below. When it comes down to the data that we did have early this morning, PCE month over month came in flat, year over year came in at 2.6 versus 2.5. So a little bit hotter, no different than the CPI though. So nothing really to worry about in my opinion. Of course, if you ask Powell, I'm sure he might say something else. But outside of that, initial jobless claims came in at 218 versus a forecast of 220. So aside from this, though, it is just the reciprocal tariffs that's going to be kicking in tomorrow. That's what the market was somewhat fearful over. When it comes to shorts, they did the right thing. They returned 1.82 million shares. Yesterday, they abnormally did increase the 2 million for those of you that tuned into my video. So today, they're doing the right thing. 10.71% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 124.77 million shares overall are being shorted. So given just the momentum behind SoFi and what they have planned for the foreseeable future, I would logically anticipate shorts to continue to return over the next couple of quarters, not a dramatic spike where they would kind of return everything, but gradually over the next 2 quarters, I do feel that it will settle roughly around that 6 to 7% range. So let me know your thoughts on that. But aside from that, looking at the options, 64 million in calls, 32 million in puts, most of which was done in the first hour of the trading day. But given everything, 48% of all the options were bullish in nature. From a bull standpoint, you see still a good consensus for it to be roughly around that $25 range for tomorrow. So very abnormal stuff. I don't know why. Maybe someone was hedging for Coinbase or maybe Amazon, Apple, all of them to have home run earnings and for it to really move higher. Maybe, I'm not really sure why that level of optimism, but aside from that, bears are anticipating for it to be sub 22. So given where we're at, there's definitely a lot more upside anticipated. These are all the transactions that did occur on the dark pool, so they're still coming in. So we have one right here, 6.2 million, 12 million, 2.5, 1 million. This is a crazy string of transactions all within like a 4-minute, 5-minute span. So 5.8, 17.7, 1.3, 3.3, or 3.5, 3.5, 10 million. So a lot of big money has been really trading SoFi, and that's a very good thing because I think generally today we did have very low volume across the board, and you can kind of see that based on this right here. So just comparing it to the last 5 days, today has been like dirt. So clearly institutions are showing some sort of hesitation about kind of committing into the equity market. And one thing to take note of, I kind of have brought this up in the past, but even if we look week over week, it does look as though that big money has been kind of exiting equity and crypto market, almost about $1.52 billion. So even though the market's been getting less and less volume and institutions really paying attention to it, SoFi seems to be the outlier and really getting all of the attention. So honestly, yeah, it's good in my opinion. So you guys, what's your kind of thoughts on that? But aside from all that fun stuff though, with it closing at 22.58, closed right above this R3. So on the fib level, so the 1 day, looking at 22.57. So that's going to be a key one. After hours today, like I said, is kind of getting dragged down slightly because of Coinbase. So tomorrow, just watch for that. But essentially, if it is able to close this above this 22.57, this is where realistically you can kind of see between that $25 and $28 range. So big things are still potentially coming on the horizon, and there hasn't been any other news, and hopefully they do put out some sort of transcripts for that kind of chat that they had with JPM, because I'm very curious on why SoFi did not announce that, because they've always announced fireside chats in the past. But aside from that though, looking on the actual chart, it is above all of the key moving averages that generally I like to look at. Stochastic RSI, because of all the volatility that did come post earnings, you are now seeing it very oversold. So a very unique circumstance. So with some good data, whether it be specific to SoFi or the broader market, you could see a nice run up. But for what it looks like, we have tariffs on the chopping block tomorrow. So that'll be an interesting type of commentary, a good way to end a Friday. Coinbase seems to be really dragging SoFi down as well. And then regarding other data points, we have non-farm payroll, unemployment, and then ISM manufacturing. So tomorrow will be another volatile day. So going back over here, just kind of watch for these strong support and resistance points. But given everything, I do feel like there is a lot more upside in SoFi's future. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Give yourself a shout out if you did buy, if you sold, or what did you do with SoFi. And one final thing, as I always share with you, pop over to my Patreon. I do give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, put out also daily day trades that you need to consider, such as even Robinhood I brought up and many others that were on point today. So definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.